Welcome to Business Class. I'm Steve Ekstrom from Learn Tourism, a nonprofit academy dedicated to advancing the tourism industry through innovative training and sustainable practices. Our mission? To empower travel professionals and communities with the knowledge they need to create meaningful, authentic, and sustainable tourism experiences. Ready to join us on this journey? Visit learntourism.org and start making a difference today.
I'm Katherine O'Donnell, President and CEO of Richmond Region Tourism, which is the destination marketing organization in Richmond, Virginia. And we represent 7 localities, so it's a regional DMO. I've been with the organization for 22 years, but I've been CEO for about a month.
22 years ago, could you have imagined yourself sitting in this seat?
No, 22 years ago, I didn't even know tourism was a thing for a career. I kind of fell into it. So I came up through the marketing side, but right after school, I worked for the state for a couple years in publications. And then that's how I ended up at the Richmond Region Tourism. I was the publications coordinator, started out doing maps and visitors guides, and ended up loving tourism. I didn't grow up in Richmond, and then I fell in love with the industry as well. And so as I said, came up through the marketing department and was director of marketing for a number of years. And then about 12 years ago, several of us came out of the marketing team and formed a community relations department, which was new at the time for DMOs, but really underscoring what we all kind of know now, which is how important it is for your community to be engaged in what you're doing and understand why tourism matters. So that was super gratifying and still going on now, has really helped us secure our footing in the community, get more support. It definitely helped us through COVID to have those strong relationships. And then about 4.5 years ago or so, as part of his succession planning, our previous CEO created an executive vice president role and assigned that to me. So that gave me the opportunity to oversee the sales and sports and services verticals of the organization, where I learned a ton. Doing all that kind of prepared me for the idea of succeeding him. And then back in January of this year, 2024, he announced his retirement, and our board announced me as his successor at the same time. So I had about 6 months transition time, and then he retired June 30th, and I began on July 1st.
What advice would you give to your younger self?
I think one thing that I've learned over the years is how much relationships matter. Certainly starting out, I was project focused, and that was the nature of the type of work I was doing for the organization. So whether it was the visitor's guide or the launching a new website or starting a new program, when I really started to learn about the impact of community was through the community relations team, but also when we came together to start our LGBTQ initiatives, and it came up with eventually Out RVA, and that was really community led. And then similarly, our Black RVA program was also community led. So it was sort of a different model than often what we do in DMOs, which is come up with a marketing campaign with an agency or within the team and launch it without talking to anybody who lives here. And so it really taught me how important that is. It makes it longer and harder sometimes, but certainly more gratifying, and has helped solidify, I think, our organization's reputation and trust within the community when we are the ones who are representing our community through communications. So I think the relationship piece has really sustained my career. And it was interesting when I shifted away from marketing to community relations, I kind of had this moment where I had to understand, I felt like I wasn't getting any quote unquote work done because I was used to doing projects, and someone in the community said to me, no, this is the work. You being here at this networking event, you being here, giving this, that is the work. It's just a different work.
There's something to be said for being present.
100%.
In a couple different senses, one present in the community and also present in the moment that you're in. Do you think it's become harder or easier for DMOs to be responsive to their communities over the last few years?
I think we've seen a shift where DMOs are embracing the community piece more than in the past, at least from my vantage point. It doesn't mean it's easier, because as your community grows, or in our case, we have 7 localities, there's a lot to keep up with and a lot of places to be present. But certainly the power of presence is real. It keeps the organization relevant. It keeps the stakeholders feeling like you're hearing them and they understand what you're doing for them. So often we're running ads or launching social media or at trade shows, doing all this work, and our community has no idea. They never see it because we don't do any of it locally. And so then in the absence of knowledge, right, they think, oh, nothing's happening. And then when we tell them everything we're doing, it's like, oh yeah. So I don't know that it's necessarily any easier. I just think that people know now more than we used to why it matters to do that.
I think for a lot of DMOs, COVID was the big turning point when you had to look at your internal, your local residents as your visitors to the restaurants and the attractions and the activities and whatnot.
Yeah.
You mentioned the LGBT and the BIPOC initiatives that you started. Were those the inspiration for starting the community outreach programs 12 years ago, or what really sparked that?
That was sort of a byproduct of having the community outreach. We did a vision planning, strategic planning process, and it came back with a lot of areas of work that we were like, who's going to do this? It's not really marketing. It's not sales. It's community engagement. So that led us to the idea of establishing a small community relations department. And really in the beginning, it was primarily focused on engaging our citizens through an tourism ambassador program, which we launched. It was focused on local media relations, which our PR teams, rightfully so, focused on national media and travel writers, et cetera. So how do we fit that in? We know it's important. We also were focused on government relations. Again, having all these localities, we need to have strong relationships with those. So that was sort of the bulk of the work. And I would say that's a large portion of it now too. But it also gave us the opportunity to launch these community-driven efforts, which have morphed over the years. It's actually the 10-year anniversary this year of Out RVA and the 5-year anniversary of Black RVA. So they've been going on a really long time and have gained a lot of momentum in the community. And we actually have a foundation in addition to our Richmond Region Tourism 501c6. We have a 501c3, which primarily was just focused on the education piece, so scholarships and the ambassador training. And then in 2020, we expanded the mission to include DEI as well as local sports tourism grants. And so we're running a lot of the community-facing pieces of the Out RVA and Black RVA through the foundation, which is allowing us to have more events and more local training and not have to spend all of it on out of market.
A couple things come to mind. You talk about your tourism ambassador program. And that is all about educating the community on how they can be part of your mission, but also why your mission matters to them. What's something you would love to learn?
A great question. I think at this point, unlike a lot of new CEOs who are coming into a new community, since I've been here, I don't have that. I need to learn the community. I need to learn the players or make the relationship. So I think for me, part of what I'm always trying to learn is set boundaries and how to figure out how best to delegate. I mean, I think I'm a good delegator, but I'm also a person who loves to build new things and have projects. So as a CEO, it's sort of this transition around fewer and fewer of my own type of projects and being more of a face and a strategist and setting the vision, et cetera. And so that, it's work I've been a part of in the past, but it's always a learning area of thinking about what it means to be someone who's not building specific projects, et cetera, on a daily basis.
Until you realize that the community itself is the project.
That's right.
And that's one of the things I've noticed about a number of CEOs is that you have to love your community. And part of the reason why, and I think CEOs in the DMO space are so special is because they get to blend their skill with their passion. There's a wonderful speaker in a course I just took with Harvard Business School who said, when your abilities meet your interests, you find your calling.
Right.
Do you think this is your calling?
I actually do. This is something I've been working toward, mentored toward for a really long time. I wouldn't have said like you asked me before, 22 years ago, this is for sure what I want to do. But after being in it for so long, there was a time, probably before COVID, where I was just reflecting on either, knowing that this retirement was coming at some point, am I going to stay here, ride it out, or should I be thinking about other things? Just come to this point where you're considering your future. And I just had this sense of like, this is where you're supposed to be. So yeah, I feel very lucky and proud to be working in this industry. I talked a lot about how I got into it and the years during this transition. And I remember when I interviewed for the first job saying that this seems like the most exciting time and I really want to be a part of that. And I still feel that way. And we've been so fortunate to have a community that has been on an upward trajectory all these years. I mean, so of course we all dipped during COVID, but we have so much more still coming in development and projects in the pipeline, in community partnerships. So it's been such a joy to be part of Richmond's growth and sort of this city on the make, this region on the make for so long that I can't imagine doing anything else. And, a lot of people in our industry move cities to grow their career, which I totally respect. But I'm also super happy that I didn't have to do that. I think is, making your own way. But part of that is just the way it all panned out from a timing perspective. But I'm really glad that I've been able to grow here and stay here and see the organization grow and the community grow.
I think that passion, you can't fake it, number one, and it's also infectious.
Right.
How do you think your staff would describe you? Or how would you like them to describe you? Let's ask that.
Yeah. Well, I think they would describe me as someone who's very loyal. And that's how I look at myself too. I'm loyal to this organization. I certainly care deeply about each one of them. One of the things that we've been doing during the transition was having one-on-one meetings with each staff person, which was just so fruitful. I asked everybody the same 5 questions and I answered them about myself around like, what motivates you? What are you passionate about? What keeps you up at night? All those types of things. And it was a great time to be very candid with one another and talk about the future, but then also to have a window into each of their worlds and remind me what they're working on specifically. So social media or the database or whatever it was really time well spent. So I think that they would say that my door is open to them and that, well, we have a great team right now. I've been there a long time and we've had a lot of great people over the years, but the team we have right now is extremely passionate. They're very excited. We've just gone through a big growth spurt with a new tourism improvement district. So we're in year 2 of that. So my colleagues in these one-on-ones gave the metaphor that I've repeated a ton, which is we're kind of like a teenage boy who grew 6 inches in one summer and his clothes don't really fit, but we're really excited. And that's who we are right now. Like we're all running really hard and excited about all these opportunities. And part of what we're working on now is sort of settling into it and figuring out how to manage all this additional work and how to use people most effectively. But one of the themes that I've laid out for the year for the team is really looking at tourism as a force for good in our community. So we know that tourism brings us economic impact and jobs, and all of that really is an outcome of what we're doing in sort of table stakes. We have to do that or we're not doing our jobs. And so how do we take it a level further and look through the lens of how is tourism impacting our community for good? An example would be we're recruiting meetings and conventions, but let's recruit events and meetings and conventions that people here care about. So you're not just getting the economic impact, but you're getting the value for the people who live here. Or how are we using our marketing to raise awareness, but also shift perceptions about Richmond? So really just taking a little extra step in the way we're looking at how we're engaging in our work and making a difference in our community.
That reminds me of the distinction between sustainability and regenerative tourism. And yes, it's okay to sustain, and it's great to sustain, but to be able to give back and leave it better than you found it is truly a gift to the community and to yourself in some ways. Before we dive back in, a quick word from our sponsor, Learn Tourism, the nonprofit academy, where we're dedicated to transforming the tourism industry with 4 key services: our cutting edge learning experience platform, which offers robust analytics and seamless updates, our custom course development, which ensures tailored learning solutions, subject matter experts who provide deep insights and valuable knowledge, and of course, our engaging speakers who are here to inspire and educate with impactful presentations. Discover how we can elevate your tourism education at learntourism.org.
Yeah, and that is an area that we have work to do, I would say. And it's on the radar for us for the future. Part of one of my teammates' goals this year is around our net zero program, which is offsetting carbon footprint for meetings and conventions that come here. So we're looking at doing the same for the travel that our team is engaging in to be on the road and sell. So that's one small area in that way. I'm really looking forward to seeing what Destinations International rolls out at the Advocacy Summit around stewardship and sustainability and the toolkits and ideas that they put forward, because I think that's the pressing issue for all of us in this industry as we look into the future around how we're going to continue to drive tourism, which we know has all these great outcomes, but then also make sure we're not damaging the planet.
So you mentioned getting to know your team members and what drives them and what their passions are. What does life-work balance mean to you?
One of the things I carry over from my predecessor, Jack, was his mantra of family first. And that's something that I believe in. And part of the reason I've stayed here for so long and had my kids here. And we just all know that family is the priority. And so we know, of course, there's no such thing as actual balance between work and life. The heart of your question is, how do you have both, right? Whatever it is outside of your life and your work. And so we encourage our team to prioritize themselves and their families, obviously while still working. For me, a lot of that looks like flexibility. So we've really retained the flexibility that COVID and remote work has afforded us. And our policy really is work for your week, which means be where you need to be. So if you're in sales and you're on the road, great. If you have in-person meetings, which all of our meetings are in person, you're in the office. If you have a day with no meetings, you could be home and working from home. People are working at different hours. And I think that allows people the ability to have more agency on their schedule and feel at least more balanced, even though it might not actually balance out from an hour perspective. I just think the flexibility really helps. But for sure, we've always said here, if you have kids or relatives who have something important like a soccer match or a play or whatever it is, a band concert, if you miss that, then that's on you, because we're not going to require you to do something that makes you miss it. So for example, back in the winter, I'm on the board of Destinations International Foundation, and I did not go to the winter board meeting because my son had a band concert, and that's just how it is.
It's one of the things, here, being a co-founder and a leader at a nonprofit, very similar situation. I tell people, it's what you do your work for that needs to be the priority.
Right.
What's something about you that might surprise people? Maybe a hidden talent or a weekend karaoke passion. I don't know.
Let's see. It's funny because one of the questions that when we had these one-on-ones that I asked everyone was to tell me something that I don't know about them, and I would do the same. And it was hard for a lot of people who've been here a really long time for me to think of something that they don't know about me. I'll say that for people who don't know me well, they may not know that I'm actually an extroverted introvert. So while I can be extroverted and don't mind it, and I'm out in the community talking to people a lot, it also wears me out. So back to the balance piece, one thing I'm learning and working on is some guardrails on the calendar so that I am not just going back to back to back for outward facing things and then sliding home, out of gas every day. And that might be something. And I think it's in our industry, it's maybe a little bit on the rarer side to have a leader that's introverted. I mean, a lot of people in our industry are high extroverts. And you can feel that, right, when we're all together at conferences, and salespeople particularly. So it's just a little bit different of a style, I think.
What did I not ask you that you wish I did?
I think you asked really great questions. What I would want people to take away, and you spoke to this earlier too, about this idea of loving where you live matters. And that's sort of been my philosophy all along. But then also as we go forward, we had this nice moment of transition at our annual meeting where we were recognizing Jack and giving him, an award and all these wonderful things to wrap up his legacy. And I had the opportunity to give almost like a TED talk of the future and lay out some of my story for people who maybe didn't know me as well, but then also like the why behind why we do all of this. It's a real responsibility to be in the role and as a destination marketing organization and shaping the narrative of what we're telling ourselves and the world about our community. And especially in places like Richmond that have challenging history, to the slave trade and the Confederacy and all these things where we've come through it as a community. And so, and it's an awesome and fun job, but I think if people are thinking about careers in the destination marketing organization space, there also needs to be sort of this weight of responsibility of what you're doing, and who it matters to and who you're speaking on behalf of.
You're a steward.
That's right. And not just in the sustainability sense, right? It's in all of it.
Yeah. It's in people, it's in place, and it's in, vitality.
Mm-hmm.
It's all those things woven together. What would you like to ask me?
I would ask you how you came to do this. Like, what is your inspiration around shepherding the next generation of leaders?
I'm a nerd. I love to learn.
Mm-hmm.
And it took me a long time to figure out that was my passion.
Mm.
A quote that stands out to me is Robert Heinlein. He wrote, "When one teaches to learn." And I learn from every interaction that I have, from every person that I meet, from every student that I encounter, or teacher who I help build a program, or destination that runs their program through our platform. I spent the first 20 years of my career working in sales and marketing, selling product, then identifying and developing product and bringing product to market. So I'd be the guy that flew in with the nice briefcase and pointed out everything in town that would appeal to travelers who can come during your off season. And this is what you have to do to market to them. And then about, gosh, it was almost 6-7 years ago, my sister, who's an instructional designer and educator by trade, asked to come with me to some trade shows. And after a handful of education programs looked at me and says, "Are they all like this?" I'm like, "Yes," because they can be so much better. And back to that, leaving a better place than you found it. Maya Angelou has a quote, "Do the best you can until you know better. Then when you
Mm.
know better, do better." So I did a lot of learning. I did a lot of learning in what it would take to make education better, what it would take to make it transformative and engaging and accessible to everybody. And then when COVID struck, my destination work evaporated overnight, as just about anybody in the consulting space experienced. And this back burner project, trying out different technologies and building our own technologies and coming up with production models and, all that stuff. Like, you know what? I'm going to do this. It just seems more fulfilling. And it is. There is a sense of kindness and generosity and giving in all that we do. And that's really rewarding to me.
Love that. I love that thinking around transforming education. To me, I felt like COVID was a moment where the meetings and convention and educational conventions had this opportunity to completely reinvent after we came out of COVID, and that mostly did not happen.
Mhm.
Feels like, to me, at least the things that I've attended or that we've hosted here. But now it seems like there's a little bit of a shift, and I feel like there's such an appetite for that. Groups that we're interested in hosting, or some we have, are interested in plugging in some way to the community and not just being within the walls of a meeting facility.
Yeah.
where it doesn't matter which destination you're in. Like to me, there's huge opportunity there. And I think there's appetite for it.
And I think that ties in. I just wrote an article on trends for next year. It's hard to
Mhm.
believe that it's only August and I'm already doing that. It's about the values traveler, not the value traveler, the values traveler, and finding travelers who share the values of your community.
I love that.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining me here in business
Yeah.
class. I appreciate you. If folks want to get in touch or learn more or plan a visit, how would they go about doing so?
Well, our website is visit.com. So all the information about everything there is to see and do in our region is there. But I'm available on LinkedIn, Katherine O'Donnell. So please reach out. Love to connect. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to Business Class. This episode was brought to you by Learn Tourism, the nonprofit academy where we advance the tourism industry with cutting edge training and sustainable practices. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to visit learntourism.org to learn more about our programs and how you can get involved. Until next time, stay curious, continue learning, and making a difference through tourism.